Every time you drink a glass of water, you expect it to be clean, refreshing, and safe. But what if it's not? Over the past 40 years, our quality of drinking water has greatly declined. Industrial waste, agricultural runoff, and pharmaceuticals are now all part of what you drink. Studies show that there's antibiotics, antidepressants, and even birth control in your water. And there's even forever chemicals, such as PFAS, which are related to hormone disruption and cancer, making its way to your tap. But the good news is there's a better way. You don't have to be micro-poisoned every single day. I'm going to share with you in this video how to protect yourself, how to use foods to detox these different chemicals out of your body, and how to get these different toxic products out of your water. So let's go ahead and dive in. But before we do, I'm Dr. Nick Zyrowski, and it's a pleasure hanging out with you in this video today. I want to go through some of the chemicals that we're dealing with in your water because most people think that their water is perfectly clean and safe. I can't tell you how often I go to a restaurant and they serve me tap water and I'm like squirming. I'm like, no, I don't want it, because I want water that's good, clean, and pure. And so let's first start with the industrial pollution. This is a big issue because there's many factories that are dumping their industrial waste into the rivers, the streams, the lakes, and quite frankly, it's because it's cheaper for them to pay the fines than it is to get rid of the waste product. And they do it until no longer they can get away with it. And eventually they are caught, but the problem is the heavy metals and all the industrial waste is already dumped into our streams. Recently, in fact, next to me, I live in Michigan, over in Sarnia, Canada. What we found is that there was recently a big crude oil spill. And in fact, they told people don't let the water come in contact with your skin. And so this is just another example of our water constantly being poisoned and it being a major issue. Another issue that most people aren't talking about is the agricultural runoff. I actually happen to live in a very agricultural dense area. There's farm fields everywhere around me. And what's happening is the heavy use of fertilizers, pesticides, and herbicides are all making their way into our drinking water. And what's happening is these amount of pesticides and herbicides and fertilizers have greatly increased over the past several years, making it a major issue today. If we look back on the history of this, from 1980 to the year 2000, this was a big explosion in the use of these different fertilizers, herbicides, and pesticides. Genetically modified crops came into the scene, and this is where they started dousing these different crops with many chemicals. Glyphosate, which is linked to lymphoma, which is getting into our water system, has increased in use 200-fold from the year 1974 to 2014. So these agricultural chemicals are becoming a massive issue and nobody's talking about it. Now, another one that's really big that nobody's talking about is pharmaceutical contamination. If we look at prescription drugs, antibiotics, hormones, psychiatric meds, they're all increasingly being found in our water supply. And you might ask yourself, well, why is this such an issue now and it wasn't before? Well, let me give you a little bit of historical context. In the year 2000, about 5% of Americans reported taking at least one prescription drug. In the year 2020, this number rose by nearly 66%, meaning 2 out of 3 adults are now taking prescription drugs. The average number of people taking prescription drugs increased from around 7 to 8 per year in the year 2000 to about 12 to 13 per year in 2020. So we're seeing a massive spike in the use of prescription drug. Let's talk about polypharmacy. This basically means somebody who is on 5 or more medications. I'll give you a statistic around this to once again help you understand why there's so many prescription medications now in your drinking water. In the year 2000, around 8% of US adults took 5 or more medications. In the year 2020, this doubled to about 17 to 20% of Americans taking 5 or more medications. And so therefore, we see this explosion in use. And these pharmaceuticals are getting into the water supply basically through human waste and also through improper disposal, people dumping them down the toilet, dumping them down the drain. But we have to remember that through human waste, your urination, your feces, this stuff actually doesn't go away. It gets into the grounds, it gets into the water system, and then it just keeps recirculating. So therefore, you go to have a drink of water, and now you're drinking birth control. Now, the modern day solution to this was actually moving all towards drinking filtered water, unfortunately in plastic bottles. This was a big thing when I grew up. It was like everybody started drinking water from plastic bottles. And now we have a new issue. You're getting plastic that's being found in your heart, in your brain, in many places in your body, your liver, that nobody ever thought that you could have microplastics in. So the microplastics are now becoming a big part of the toxicity issue that you're facing. And these microplastics have become a big issue because they're disrupting hormones in your body. I mean, if you just look around you, how many men and women are suffering from testosterone and estrogen and all kinds of hormone disruption that they don't know how to solve. So this is very important to make sure that we're not using plastic bottles, and there is a better way. Let me show you what I use. Whether you're using city water or well water, contaminants like chlorine, lead, PFAS, chemicals, and even pesticide residues can make their way into your daily drinking water. And even quote-unquote safe levels can build up over time, affecting your health. Clean water should never be a compromise. And with Zyrowski's reverse osmosis countertop water filter, it isn't. This powerhouse uses an advanced 7-layer filtration system that removes up to 99.9% of contaminants. Everything from rust and fluoride to over thousands of impurities that you do not want in your glass. Plus, it's fast, filtering a 50-ounce pitcher in just 3 minutes. It's also incredibly efficient. One RO filter purifies up to 4,000 liters. And to put that into context, that's about 8,000 bottles of water at just 2 cents per liter. And it comes with 2 pitchers, so you'll always have clean water ready for drinking, cooking, or anything else. Clean water is a non-negotiable. And with Zyrowski, they make it possible. They make it simple, fast, and also cost-effective. Enjoy a 17% exclusive discount on Zyrowski's website with my code DrNick17. The link's in the description below. Thanks to Zyrowski for sponsoring this video. Remember, you can save 17% on your very own water system by clicking on the link in the description below. The next chemical I want to cover that I briefly mentioned before is called PFAS, and this is a forever chemical. It's called a forever chemical because it doesn't go away. As we have this continually accumulate in our environment, it continues to accumulate. There's nothing making it disappear. And so you can find these PFASs in the nonstick cookware, waterproofing material, firefighting foam, and many of these different chemicals that are used. And unfortunately, there's no way to break them down. They just continue to accumulate and then they get into your body. We're also looking at disinfection products such as chlorine. There's a great thing that we have here in the United States, and it's that we don't go and drink water that's filled with bacteria that makes us sick. The bad part is that one of the ways that this bacteria is being cleansed from the water is by using chlorine, which is unfortunately going to be very toxic to us. And so this is an issue as well. And this is, once again, this is why we want to use proper filtration in order to get this stuff out of our water. I don't want to sound all doom and gloom here, but we have to make sure we're putting the effort into taking this out. We also want to make sure that we're being aware of heavy metals. Heavy metals are coming from many different ways. One of them I talked about was industrial waste, but another way is just aging infrastructure. I live in Michigan. There was the huge famous case of the lead pipes in Michigan pouring tons of lead into people's bodies through the old outdated piping system. So this is an issue. You even have things like arsenic or manganese, which can be naturally occurring in the water based off of geographical areas. Where I live, we actually live on a well, meaning that we are pumping the water from the ground. And what my water has in it in my own home is a huge amount of arsenic. So we go through a process to pull this arsenic out so we're not getting it within our system. Let's talk about real quick some different foods that you can use in order to get some of these toxins out of our system. We basically realize they're inevitable, they exist. If we use proper filtration, we can do a great deal of good to our body to get these different toxins not even entering our system. But then if they do get into our system, there are some foods that we can use that help us detox. The first one I want to mention is cruciferous vegetables. We're talking about like broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbage. These cruciferous vegetables are particularly unique because they have sulfur compounds which actually enhance the liver's detox capability, which is awesome. Lemon is also good because it's going to boost bile production and alkalize the body, and this is going to support the digestive system to be able to dump these toxins out. We can use a food like garlic because it contains sulfur, which is going to help the body flush toxins and also help the liver. We can use things like cilantro and parsley. These are also really good, specifically because they chelate heavy metals and they support kidney filtration. They're rich in antioxidants and also rich in chlorophyll. We can look to leafy greens. The leafy greens are going to be high in fiber, chlorophyll, and antioxidants, and this is going to not only support your digestion, but it's also going to support your liver liver detox. From there, we look at berries. Okay, berries are very good because they're very micronutrient dense. They're high in antioxidants, and they're going to help fight the oxidative stress that all these toxins put on your body. They're going to help fight inflammation, and they're going to be also good for your gut. So as a whole, the big thing that we need to do here is make sure that we're using a proper purification system in order to get the toxins from our water, and then we are going and eating foods on a regular basis, which are part of a good, healthy diet that helps our body function in the way that it should. The natural detox mechanisms that we all inherently have, these different foods are going to help these detox functions operate at their peak capacity so that you can remove toxins from your body. I'm Dr. Zyrowski. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you love this video, I think you'll like this one next.